Hi guys, so today to pass the time, I decided to put together a model kit. It's the Ava 01 from Evangelion Neon Genesis. This is really one of the first shows that made me feel some type of way, anime wise. Before that, I just kind of watched it because I thought it looked cool, some of the shows, but this was the show that really made me feel like I was just really engrossed into it. Evangelion used to air on Saturday nights on Cartoon Network's watch of late shows called Toonami. Toonami would air only on Saturday nights and it would only play Japanese anime. It was the one time of the week you got to see something other than American cartoons. I was in college back then. I think I was a sophomore, and usually I would be up late working on architecture projects when it aired on Toonami back in 2003. I mean, I'd usually start off watching the show while I was doing homework, and then I'd find myself not doing homework for the length of the show. It was like once it went off, I think Inuyasha would come on after, and then I would get back to work. But for some reason, the show just had me hooked and enthralled once it was on. I mean, I remember getting so emotional at the thought of Gendo, the father of the lead character. He was just like, only way I could put it, I guess, he was super dedicated to his job and not really too much dedicated to his kid. He only asked Shinji to come and be with him because he needed him to pilot the Ava unit. This one that I'm building, actually. Shinji's relationship with Gendo is probably what hooked me the most. I didn't have the greatest relationship growing up with my dad, and so I feel like that part of the show really resonated with me and brought me back every weekend to see if Gendo would change. He never did, but still. I mean, it was pretty messed up. Shinji gets there and pretty much Gendo immediately passed him off to a guardian, and that's what most of the show is really about. Shinji's interactions with these different people, from the partners he has. He starts off learning that there's one other, I believe her name was Anami, and then there was the white girl from Germany. Shinji was pretty quickly passed off to a guardian, and all his interaction with his father were job related. Most of what you see is him, Shinji, kind of taking care of his guardian, who's supposed to be taking care of him. She is kind of the comic relief of the show. Her and her rival spy slash love interest. The show really does a great job of showing how the Gendo and Shinji's relationship affects Shinji. At one point, he threatens to run away, but he kind of decides that he should be there for the other pilots. Um, it's a team effort, I guess. The show is 26 episodes long, and it left on a cliffhanger. Honestly, this was also my first show with an ending. American cartoons are ongoing episodes. They don't really have an ending. Usually, the shows don't link together either. Like, each episode is practically brand new, and it's unnecessary for you to necessarily watch the previous one to enjoy the next episode. But animes are more of a full season, a single story, which is something I wasn't used to in terms of cartoons. So having the show end, not just be canceled, was a little odd. Especially because back then the internet wasn't what it was, and so I waited for like the second season before I started doing my research, and I realized the show was created in 1995, almost 10 years prior to me watching it. Um, the show is mostly about the relationship between the children and their guardians, the constant threat, and the reason for the AV units are the angels. They're the villains of the show. The show is a little complex to understand, but the basic idea is that two aliens, Adam and Lilith, crashed onto Earth and created life. Adam and Lilith were carriers of the seeds of life for a dying race of alien beings. They created life on Earth and even the moon. Like, they created the moon, not life on it. Angels were born from Adam and Lilith and are trying to free them from the humans who captured them. Humans are, like usual, trying to learn as much about the beings as they can, but they really don't know anything about the angels. And by the end of the 26 episode run, you don't really learn too much more about the angels, like where they come from exactly. They come from Adam and Lilith, and they're constantly attacking this one base because they house Adam, which is like a tiny Nautilus thing that can be held in your hand, and Lilith, who is about as big as the AV units. They're just like storing them. Uh, so these three kids, they pretty much are getting inside these giant mech suits and fighting the angels that are trying to break into that facility to get Adam and Lilith back. And essentially it's weird, like they have most of the buildings, they go down underneath this city, and they kind of lock all the people into these bunkers, and basically these giant robots come up and or these kids in these mech suits, they come up and they pretty much use the city as like a battleground. It's literally like watching Godzilla fight Mothra. um, it's really cool, and I think that might have been one of the main motivations for when they made this show back then. While it was some action, most of it was drama. It wasn't a lot of actions. Like, the kids did not fight the monsters every episode. which was kind of good since the lore of the show is that the AV units had to be attached to a power unit. So they were always like near the base. They couldn't go too far. And then later on in episodes, I believe they received a battery pack, but it lasted for literally minutes. I think they were given 5 minutes to pretty much destroy the angel, which I fight and I do 5 and 7 minute fights, and I'm gonna be real. When you're told you have to finish a fight within 5 minute limit, oh, it's one of the hardest fights, and that 5 minutes goes by so quickly when you're winning. Now, when you're losing, time goes by so much slower, and it just seems like that buzzer will never end. And for a show like this, there is no buzzer. It's 5 minutes or you're done fighting and your opponent is not done fighting. So that kind of ramped up the tension, and the tension was always high in this show. I personally picked this unit to put together first with the base because it's Shinji's ride. It's the unit that you saw on TV the most, I feel like, and it's the one that saw like all the box art, and you just see it the most. It's the like star of the show, kind of. And to be honest, I thought these are also just cool looking mech suits. Because they look foreign to us. They look like they would have come from an alien technology versus the Gundam series of mech suits, which they tend to look more like Iron Man built them, or something that we would have come up with, not necessarily Alien would have come up with. And I think that's why I gravitated towards these designs more so than the Gundam series of designs. Don't get me wrong, I think some of those are really cool, like of course the RX-82 model and or 782. I'm not sure what it's called exactly, but um, and the Zaku, those traditional style looking ones were really cool. Some of the iron-blooded orphans ones look really interesting with the lights that they have on it and everything, but those all to a degree look very similar, very boxy and square shaped. This looks more biomorphic, even though it doesn't have perfectly rounded areas all over. It does have more biomorphic shapes where like the thighs are more rounded, and the hands are more sharp. I just really dig it. So now that I got the AV unit all put together, I'm gonna go ahead and put together the base. This weapons base is usually what they stood on when they were inside the facility, and this base would then rise up when they were ready to fight, and they'd have like weapons that they take off of it, and typically they have like a some sort of cord, like a power cord attached to them. I think eventually I'll find some small plastic wiring to glue to the back to make it seem like it's plugged into the base. But for now, I'm just going to put the base together. So I read the instructions and realized that it didn't have pegs to put the model kit on. So I went on ahead and grabbed some double-sided sticky tape. This is usually used for hanging photos or posters, but it's super strong, so I cut really tiny pieces off of it, small enough to fit underneath the feet, and I pretty much glued it, or taped it down to the base. Thanks again for watching. If you really enjoyed this and made it to this long and want to see more stuff like this, more of my creative work, go ahead and hit that like button and let me know.